Tonight, Joe Biden's high-stakes moment at NATO, the president's first press conference since his dismal debate performance.
Did you see any damage to our standing in my leading this conference? Have you seen a more successful conference?
Biden stands his ground after his latest stumble.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
Questions swirl over Chrystia Freeland's future as finance minister.
I have been talking with Mark Carney for years now. He would be an outstanding addition.
A serial killer guilty in the deaths of 4 Indigenous women.
Justice was served today.
Plus, fears over the rising cost of formula as families budget for a baby staple.
How much is it going to go up in 3 years?
And when a semifinal takes a violent turn in the stands.
Esto es un desastre. Esto es un desastre.
The soccer players exchanging punches with fans at Copa America.
There's a fight over there, too.
CTV National News with Omar Sachedina. Reporting tonight, Heather Butts.
Good evening. A defiant Joe Biden held a critical news conference at the NATO summit in Washington tonight. A crucial test after his devastating debate 2 weeks ago. His ability to run for re-election facing doubts from within his own party. The U.S. president is again vowing to stay in the race.
I'm just going to keep moving. Keep moving. And because, look, I got more work to do. We've got more work to finish.
But was it enough to calm Democratic nerves? Here's CTV's Washington Bureau Chief, Joy Malbin.
Thank you. Please be seated.
A major moment for the 81-year-old president, insisting he's the most qualified to run for president.
I'm determined on running, but I think it's important that I allay fears by let them see me out there. I am not opposed if my doctors tell me I should have another neurological exam. I'll do it.
Facing the press under pressure, unscripted, trying to convince the country he's up to the job after that disastrous debate.
I just got to pace myself a little more. Pace myself. And the next debate, I'm not going to be traveling into 15 time zones a week before.
At times a bit rambling, every flub scrutinized, calling his vice president Donald Trump.
I wouldn't have picked Vice President Trump to be vice president. I think she was not qualified to be president.
Taking tough questions on world affairs and laughing off an earlier brutal stumble when he introduced Ukraine's President Zelensky.
Ladies and gentlemen, President Putin. President Putin. We're going to beat President Putin. President Zelensky.
Quickly apologizing, but one press conference is unlikely to change minds on Capitol Hill.
If things stay as they are, it's likely that Donald Trump will win the election and it will lose the Senate and will lose the House.
More Democrats publicly defecting and calling for Biden to step aside.
It's not about telling us, it's about showing voters.
The drumbeat of doubt growing louder as several polls show Biden trailing Donald Trump in key swing states needed to win the White House. The New York Times reporting some Biden advisors are discussing how to convince Biden to step aside and testing Vice President Kamala Harris's chances against Trump.
Now, we always knew this election would be tough, and the past few days have been a reminder that running for president of the United States is never easy.
In the end, it will all come down to Joe Biden. He won't be pushed. The president is the one who will decide, does he stay or does he go? As attention shifts to Donald Trump and the Republican National Convention next week. Heather?
All right, Joy, thanks. The former U.S. president was quick to pounce on Biden's mix-up, calling Kamala Harris Vice President Trump. Posting the video clip on Truth Social with the comment, "Great job, Joe." Biden was quick to respond on X, saying, by the way, yes, I know the difference. One's a prosecutor and the other's a felon. CTV political analyst Eric Ham says he expects the questions surrounding Biden to continue, but he thinks the president communicated effectively tonight.
In terms of the issues surrounding his age, his fitness, his cognitive ability to engage, I think what we saw tonight was a man of substance, a man who certainly understands the veracity of the job and also has a clear understanding of the depth of the issues that he is facing and that also are facing the country.
At that same summit in Washington, the Prime Minister committed to meeting NATO's defense spending target by 2032. Justin Trudeau has faced relentless pressure from other countries to produce a roadmap for how the country plans to ante up. CTV's Judy Trin has more.
Bonjour tout le monde.
A long-awaited announcement on the last day of the NATO summit.
Canada fully expects to reach NATO's 2% of GDP spending target by 2032.
Bolstering Arctic security will be part of the plan. Canada is entering into an agreement with the United States and Finland to build dozens of icebreakers. It announced intentions to buy up to 12 submarines to patrol the Arctic. But there are no details about costs, when the equipment comes online, and how the government will pay for it.
The fact that those details aren't there and no money is there really undercuts the value of what they're announcing.
Canada has come under fire at the summit from the U.S. Speaker of the House.
Talk about riding on America's coattails. They have the safety and security of being on our border and not having to worry about that. I think that's shameful.
To the Wall Street Journal that called Canada a NATO scofflaw.
We continually step up and punch above our weight, something that isn't always reflected in the crass mathematical calculation that certain people turn to very quickly.
Still, 23 of 32 nations meet that NATO pledge. Successive governments, liberal and conservative, have promised to hit the mark, but have not set a date until now.
Now what's starting to happen is our allies are beginning to think, let's start linking other things with Canada's military spending and putting trade and other relationships potentially on the table.
Canada's current defense budget is approximately $30 billion a year. To meet the NATO pledge 8 years from now will require doubling that amount, if not more. Judy Trin, Joint Andrews Air Force Base.
For more analysis, let's bring in CTV Chief Political Correspondent Vashi Kapellos. Vashi, Ottawa has promised to meet the 2% spending target by 2032. Why now, and how is the government planning to pay for it?
Hi, Heather. Yeah, there aren't a lot of answers when it comes to how this new spending will be accounted for or where the government is going to get the money for it. We are talking about additional billions of dollars each year, but I think that is reflective of the first part of your question, which is why now? Just a few months ago, April 8th, I think, the Minister of Defense released a defense policy review. He articulated a goal of getting to 1.76% by 2030, but didn't have a goal of going to 2%. The pressure from allies in the interim has increased to a point where it came to a head in Washington this week. And my sources say this plan to get to 2% was only finalized in the last few days. Says a lot about the reasons for actually making this announcement now. Heather?
All right, Vashi. And we also heard from the Prime Minister today on reports of tensions with the Finance Minister. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, this story from the Globe certainly set off alarm bells here in Ottawa. The Prime Minister did nothing to quell the rumors that Chrystia Freeland is on her way out from the finance portfolio. It looks like people around him certainly believe she is a big part of the reason that they are doing so badly in public opinion polls. Whether Mark Carney gets into the game, well, that's a whole different story, though the Prime Minister didn't deny asking him.
I have been talking with Mark Carney for years now about getting him to join federal politics. I think he would be an outstanding addition at a time when Canadians need good people to step up in politics.
Now, sources close to Carney tell me that it would be a long shot for him to come into the portfolio at this time. He is still considering, of course, a bid to replace Trudeau at the helm of the Liberal Party. Associating himself with the Trudeau brand at this point could be politically damaging in the long run. What seems much more certain, however, as I mentioned off the top, is that Chrystia Freeland is likely on her way out this summer from the Minister of Finance. Heather?
Vashi, thank you. With the Prime Minister at the NATO summit in Washington, it left Pierre Poilievre and NDP leader Jagmeet Singh to address the Assembly of First Nations, both blaming Ottawa for failing Indigenous communities.
You've been held back by a broken system that takes power away from you and places it in the hands of politicians and bureaucrats in Ottawa. That's why I'm committed to ending the Ottawa knows best paternalistic system.
You continue to face significant injustice and human rights violations, frankly.
It was Poilievre's first in-person address to the Assembly since becoming Conservative leader, and he garnered mixed reviews. He was criticized for failing to mention missing and murdered Indigenous women. A major ruling for Manitoba's Indigenous community in a shocking case that has gripped the nation. Jeremy Skibitsky was found guilty of first-degree murder in the deaths of 4 women. The defense had argued he suffered from a mental illness. The judge said he knew the disturbing killings were morally wrong. CTV's Alison Bamford was inside the courthouse.
These songs for healing and honor, and this dance for joy. Inside this Winnipeg courthouse, Jeremy Skibitsky found guilty on 4 counts of first-degree murder in the deaths of Rebecca Contois, Morgan Harris, Mercedes Myron, and an unidentified woman known as Buffalo Woman. A verdict loved ones waited more than 2 years to hear.
I feel like a weight has been lifted off my shoulders. Justice was served today.
Emotions erupted inside the courtroom before spilling onto the front steps and into the streets of downtown Winnipeg. Justice served, but one question unanswered.
Why did he have to do it? I wish we knew that.
Skibitsky preyed on his victims at homeless shelters in the spring of 2022, assaulting them, then strangling or drowning them before committing sexual acts on their bodies and throwing them into dumpsters. His lawyers argued the 37-year-old was not criminally responsible or NCR, and schizophrenic delusions drove him to kill the women. The judge called the facts jarring, ruling Skibitsky did not have a mental disorder at the time of the deaths, but rather he deliberately planned the murders.
This really does help to draw the line as to where that, NCR aspect kicks in and what falls short of NCR.
A precedent-setting case that highlighted the issues of missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, sparking countrywide rallies to have a Winnipeg landfill searched for the remains of Harris and Myron, now set for the fall.
That's the next chapter, and just to bring my sister's remains home, the last bit of closure that we need.
As for Skibitsky, he sat still in the prisoner's box, showing no emotion during the verdict. He now faces a mandatory life sentence in prison with no chance of parole for 25 years. Alison Bamford, CTV News, Winnipeg.
4 people from the same extended family have been killed in a multi-vehicle crash in BC's southern interior. It's the latest in a series of crashes in the province that have claimed at least 16 lives in the past week. 2 cars and a tractor-trailer collided on a highway in Caramios, 4 hours east of Vancouver. All 4 deaths occurred in the same vehicle. Meanwhile, a family of 3, including an infant, died in a head-on collision in the Fraser Valley on Wednesday. Multiple earthquakes were recorded off the coast of Vancouver Island this morning, part of a swarm of quakes recently detected in the region. The strongest hit around 210 kilometers from Tofino and measured a 6.4 magnitude. 2 other smaller quakes were detected not long after. No damage has been reported. People in BC are also on high alert for wildfires. The July heat wave ramping up concerns on the extremely dry front lines. In Alberta, the amount of land burned has doubled in the past 2 days. CTV's BC Bureau Chief Andrew Johnson on the firefight in the West.
More than 150 fires are burning in British Columbia, including 35 that started over just the past day as the province enters a critical period.
We are preparing for the possibility that wildfire starts will increase in an accelerated manner from this day forward.
People living on more than 300 properties in the province's interior and north have been told to be ready to leave quickly.
500 firefighters are already on the ground across the BC backcountry, bolstered by 1,500 more officials say they have on standby. BC has also proactively requested additional support from out of province.
Every fire has the potential to be a concern if we don't get on it right away. And so we continue to surge aggressive initial attack to any new start.
Dozens of temperature records have been broken in BC this week, and that kind of extreme heat can dry out the forests very quickly. So starting tomorrow at noon, a province-wide campfire ban is going into effect.
Campfire bans are critical to reducing the risk of human-caused wildfires and to allow the BC Wildfire Service to focus its resources on naturally caused fires.
In Alberta, the fire situation has also escalated after temperatures spiked and an overnight lightning storm.
We've seen rapid growth on many wildfires due to the heat wave. As a result, the total area burnt has doubled in the last 48 hours.
Close to 1,000 people have been evacuated in a remote northern community on the Little Red River Cree Nation over concern fire could cut off access to Highway 58. The good news in Alberta's forest protection area, there is rain in the forecast that could help on the front line. But in BC, it's expected to be dry everywhere for the next week and a half. Andrew Johnson, CTV News, Vancouver.
A Calgary woman is facing charges after police say her dog was left in a hot car on Canada Day.
Investigators believe Lucky had been left in the enclosed car for more than 2 hours.
Witnesses called police, but officers arrived too late to save the animal. The owner, 30-year-old Caitlin Rose Folkins, had gone for a walk and now faces 1 count of causing damage or injury to an animal and 1 count of causing an animal distress. It could result in up to $30,000 in fines and a 5-year prison sentence. Coming up, parents feeling the pinch.
I can't imagine how stressful it must be for them, wondering how they're going to feed their baby.
The reasons behind the recent spike in baby formula prices. Plus, the punch-up with fans at Copa America. The overall increase in the cost of living has many Canadian parents struggling to meet the needs of their children. Those in need of baby formula are facing a 10% jump in price since the start of this year. And for some, it's bringing back nightmares of the spike in prices and shortages last year. CTV's Kathy Lee reports.
When the price for baby formula goes up, so does anxiety and stress for parents.
To go up by like $12 in the span of 7 months is a bit extreme. I've seen other brands doing it too, but it definitely seems like Similac is the worst.
In a statement to CTV News, Abbott, the U.S. company that makes baby formula brand Similac, says infant formula is very complex to produce and export. This makes it necessary to adjust for some of our increasing costs to serve Canadian families. Statistics Canada data shows the average price of baby formula jumped 30% between February 2022 and February 2024. Food safety issues at Abbott and Nestle plants created a supply issue driving up costs. And additional data from the agency shows formula has jumped up 10% during the first 5 months of this year.
We go to market and we use those donated dollars that we get to purchase baby formula. And so the cost for us on making sure that we have that in supply to feed those little Calgarians has really gone through the roof.
But it's not a supply issue driving up the price this time.
The currency is another issue. Transportation costs are another issue. Multiple factors that have actually made this product more expensive.
You end up with companies that have like a monopoly on it. Like you go to Walmart and there's basically only 3 brands of formula on the shelf and they can do whatever they want.
Perhaps there's relief for Canadian parents. Canada Royal Milk, a Chinese-owned manufacturer based in Kingston, Ontario, launched its own baby formula, the only one being produced in the country. Experts say adding a new baby formula product to the Canadian market may not reduce prices immediately, but it will likely decrease the chance of price increases by the end of the year. Kathy Lee, CTV News, Calgary.
After the break, life imitates animated art.
Do you know Insane in the Brain?
We mostly know classical.
Hip-hop meets the symphony in the heart of London. Fans are tonight remembering actress Shelley Duvall, best known for her role as the tormented wife to actor Jack Nicholson in The Shining. Duvall also starred in 7 films directed by her mentor, Robert Altman. Duvall's partner said she died in her sleep at her Texas home of complications from diabetes. Shelley Duvall was 75. Well, fans of the long-running sitcom The Simpsons might remember the episode when Homer appeared at a music festival with Cypress Hill.
Somebody ordered the London Symphony Orchestra, possibly while high. Cypress Hill, I'm looking in your direction.
Well, more than 28 years later, the animation collaboration became reality at London's Royal Albert Hall. The California hip-hop group was joined by the acclaimed Symphony for a sold-out concert at the historic venue. Lead rapper Be Real posted on social media, the show was truly amazing. Looks like fun. After the break, the brawl that could impact Canada at Copa America. There is some added excitement heading into Saturday's battle for third place at the Copa America. Canada is set to face Uruguay, who lost a bruising semifinal clash to Colombia last night in more ways than one. After losing the match, players got involved in a brawl in the stands. CTV's Heather Wright has the fallout.
There's a fight over there too? A full-blown soccer brawl broke out in the stands in Charlotte, North Carolina last night, moments after the semifinal Copa America match between Uruguay and Colombia ended. Players versus fans in an ugly brawl that included Uruguay forward Darwin Núñez fighting a Colombian fan in a melee that lasted several minutes. Afterwards, Núñez was visibly upset as he stood on the field with his wife and young children. The team captain says family members were being threatened by rowdy fans until players intervened.
Esto es un desastre. Nuestra familia corrió peligro. Tuvimos que meternos como pedo para arriba de la tribuna a sacar a nuestros seres queridos con bebés chiquitos recién nacidos.
Players blame a handful of drunk fans for harassing their loved ones, instigating an incident that security and police struggled to get under control, and is now being investigated by soccer's South American governing body. CONMEBOL strongly condemns any act of violence that affects football. There is no place for intolerance and violence on and off the field. It's not clear if or how many players will be suspended. Canada is set to take on Uruguay for third place on Saturday, capping off a tournament that has captivated Canadian soccer fans while also drawing their ire. Many fans complaining about bad calls or no calls, including this headbutt on Alistair Johnston.
That's been one of the things that struck me most about Canada during this run, is that they haven't let themselves get drawn too much into that conversation of whether this call should have gone, whether another team would have gotten that call. They've been relatively focused on the goal at hand, and that's football.
The final between Colombia and Argentina goes on Sunday. It's David for Canada! While the Canadians will try to end this Cinderella run with one more win. Heather Wright, CTV News, Toronto.
That is our newscast for this Thursday night. I'm Heather Butts. For all of us at CTV National News, thank you for watching. Good night, and I'll see you again tomorrow.
CTV National News, Canada's #1 newscast.